Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading in the month of March. So March was again another good reading month for me. I feel like I've been averaging like 6 books a month now, and so I just am very happy with that progress. So yeah, I feel like this month was a good variety of like historical fiction and crime thrillers. So it was like very good variety in terms of what I read, and for the most part I enjoyed pretty much all of them. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Alrighty, so starting out, I first have Dragonfly by Leila Meacham, and this is a book that I actually had on my TBR that I suggested for one of the book clubs that I'm a part of with some of my friends from school, and so this is what we ended up reading this month, and I honestly really liked it. Like, it's basically a historical fiction novel that takes place during World War II. We follow 5 people that are recruited by the OSS to kind of go into Nazi-occupied France and to kind of their stories there. And I loved following all these different people of different backgrounds, and everyone each had their own reason of why they wanted to fight the Germans, and you kind of seeing them having, like, you know, being motivated to do this, and just the total fear of them being caught out. We also, in addition to getting the 5 different people's perspectives, we also get perspectives of the Germans that they're encountering. We get their kind of operations officer that's back in England, and we can finally see how the lies that they're starting to weave are starting to catch up with them. And I thought this was really well done. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. My only complaint was it was very hard to keep track of who was who, especially because their code names all start with L. They do provide you with like a cast list and their different names and code names and all that. It was mostly with the 3 guys that were the spies that I had a hard time keeping straight. And other than that though, I thought this book was really well done. I loved seeing, basically you see the story progress from different people and how everything is very much interconnected, and it was just a wild ride. It was a lot of fun, and everyone else in the book group really liked it as well. So I haven't read anything from this author, but it looks like she has some other historical fictions like the front cover as well, so I would be interested in kind of reading more of her works in the future. Sorry, I just changed some of the settings in here because the clouds keep going in and out of my room. But the next book that I read was probably one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it is The Rose Code by Caine. And this is another historical fiction novel that follows 3 women in their different stories of their contribution to the war efforts during World War II in England. So these girls are recruited by, I always forget the name, they are recruited to go work at Bletchley Park, which was, if you're familiar with The Imitation Game, it's where a lot of the code breaking was done during the war. And we follow these 3 women who become very close friends, and they each have their own kind of place in that kind of area, participating in the code breaking process. And so the book starts out where one of the girls receives an encrypted letter from one of their previous friends saying they needed help break her out of an insane asylum. And this is a few years after the war, and these girls have a falling out and they hate each other, but we don't know why. And so we get flashbacks to them meeting and eventually the events that lead to the fallout. And I really liked it. Like, I thought this was really well done. It was super suspenseful. I always feel like Caine book always have, like, it leads to like a super like intense climax, and then like all heck breaks loose, and then it's just like a dash to the beginning. So this one was really well done, and I also like how it integrates kind of other women's kind of history into this as well. A lot of the characters in here are loosely based off of other people, and we do get some kind of cameos from actual people that were there, like Alan Turner, who is like the one who cracked the Enigma code, like some people that were actually real historical figures. I love that as well. And again, she always has like another cameo from other characters within her kind of World War II literary world as well, which I enjoyed. But yes, this book was just honestly a lot of fun, really well done, and 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously, Caine has quickly becoming one of my favorite kind of historical fiction writers. So next up I have the Tales and Teacups book club picks for the months of March and April, and again this was another one that was a very disappointing read for me, and it was The Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis, and I had really high expectations going into this. And essentially the premise of this book is that we follow a girl named Laura who is a mother of two in the early 1910s, and she decides that she wants to go back to school and pursue a career in journalism, and her family and her husband reside in an apartment above the New York Public Library, where her husband is a curator there. And while this is all going on, there are these books that are mysteriously disappearing from the library, and it causes a lot of conflicts going forward. And then we flash forward 80 years. We follow Sadie, who is Laura's granddaughter, who is also working at the New York Public Library, and these books are disappearing as well, and it kind of goes off from there. But I felt like the premise of this would have made such like an amazing book, and so I was really excited for this one, and this is one that really fell flat. Originally I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but as I was writing my review for Goodreads I realized that I didn't really necessarily enjoy this book as much as I wanted it to, and I feel like there were a lot of ways in which this book fell flat. I felt like the characters were really one-dimensional, and they were so naive and self-absorbed in their own like minds that if they actually paid attention to a lot of the things going on around them, a lot of the conflict and troubles would have been easily solved. And there was such a suspension of disbelief because, especially if you look at the age gaps between the characters, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If this took place in like the 70s or 80s, it would have made more sense in terms of the intergenerational age gaps, but other than that it was like really weird. And I like the first 50 pages really started off strong, and then that's when I started to lose interest, and there were so many instances of strange character development that did not make sense. Like it would just be out of the blue, and I was just like angry reading it at the end. So this was one that had kind of very polarizing reviews as well within our book club as well. So if you want to contribute to this and see where within you fall, because there was like a 5-star review, 3, and then 1, so we were all over the spectrum. So if you are still interested in wanting to see where you fall within this review spectrum, then you know, help yourself. You'd have basically till the end of April. But yeah, this book was a major disappointment. So after that I ended up finishing a book that I've been buddy reading with my friend, and this is a series that she read when it first came out in the early 2010s, and so I'm just along for the ride, and it is The Name of the Star by Maureen Johnson. And this is like, again, a YA, early YA fantasy novel that follows a girl named Rory who ends up attending a boarding school in London, and as she's there are these strings of murders taking place that are eerily similar to Jack the Ripper, and she ends up learning that she can see ghosts, and it kind of goes off from there. But there's a lot of like flaws in here, and I think ones that have not aged well within like the last 10 years in terms of, you know, kind of people's expectations for books. Like in particular, there's kind of a lot of girl on girl hate that is just unnecessary and uncalled for. There's a lot of focus in girls' appearances and how they look and all that. So like a lot of it is the ones that are very, like some of the things in here that I had problems with were very reminiscent of the times when this was written. So I'm happy to see that we've kind of moved away from these kind of tropes, and so those were my only complaints about this. Like this book is not amazing, like I wasn't blown away, but it was a fun read, and I actually enjoyed myself when I was reading it. It was just fun. I was like, you know, transported back to kind of traveling days, and just it took my mind away from like the pandemic stuff and made me really want to go travel to London and like see these places. And I liked how it integrated kind of history and then also kind of some gore as well, because she doesn't shy away from being very graphic about these murders. But like I said, it's not perfect, but I had a lot of fun reading it, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was a lot of fun actually. Like I wasn't expecting a lot from this, but it is a good combination of like fantasy, thriller, fun that I don't like have to take too seriously. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to reading the next 2 books in this trilogy. So next I ended up picking the next book in the Inspector Gamache series, which is A Trick of the Light by Louise, and this is a series that I am slowly been reading and I want to get caught up in by the end of this year. So I always there's always something like warm and welcoming by going back into this literary world, even though it deals with murder. But I really love how with each book that kind of sense of found family and community within this Three Pines literary world makes me I don't know, it makes me feel really warm and cozy. So I really like that aspect. And again, with each book I feel like we get so much character development with a lot of characters in here, and this one was no different. Basically the premise of this kind of crime, I don't want to be too spoilery because a lot of the books are interconnected in terms of overarching narratives within the characters, but during one of Clara's art exhibits, there is this woman that is found dead in her bushes the next day, and she realizes that this used to be her old friend from years ago, and it kind of goes off from there. But again, like I said, I always love these books. I feel like they're really well done, and I love how, again, like I said, there's very much overarching narratives within these books of these characters. These characters are always dynamic and they're changing and they're evolving based on what they're going through, and I think these are really well done. Again, like I said, these ones just a lot of fun and they feel like home when I read this. So obviously I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I don't want to be too in depth on this one because I feel like, especially for crime series, it's hard to explain what's going on without spoiling too much. So I'm trying to be as vague as possible. And lastly this month I ended up picking up Heartbreak by Rachel Caine, and this is the 5th and final book in the Stillhouse Lake series. I was reading this and I realized that the author passed away in late 2020, so this is her last piece of work ever. So it was a little bittersweet once I realized that it's like one thing for a series to end when the author chooses it to end. It's another thing when the kind of book or series ends because the author passes away. So I think, yeah, so it was a little sad just hearing about that. But this is a series, and the first book, like the first 2 books, are very much kind of different from where the series is now, so I don't want to be too, you know, spoilery with this. But basically the premise is that we follow Gwen, who is a mother of 2, and several years ago it was exposed that her husband was a very notorious serial killer, and everyone assumed that she was somehow involved even though she wasn't. And so even though she was acquitted, everyone still assumes that she was somehow involved, and there's these online haters that are still trying to expose her and her kids. So she is very much on the run, and it kind of goes off from there. This one we follow Gwen and her family, where there is this mother who has disappeared and these 2 kids are found dead in the back of her car, and it kind of leads to an investigation there that also ties in Melvin Royal, who is her husband as well. But yeah, I think this one was not like, because I think she, like in the author note, she's like, if this is the last, you know, book in this series, then, you know, hope you enjoy it. So I think there is some bittersweetness, and I think the author kind of knew going into this that this may be her last book in this series, which is sad. And you can kind of get some, I feel like there is some closure for these characters, but again, a lot of it was left open-ended. But I thought this was, again, a really good, you know, novel in this series. It's very consistent from what we've seen, where we have like the dark ruling murders, and, you know, it ends on such like a big, you know, climax where so much is going on and so much is happening. I was able to figure out who the kind of killer was early on, but besides that, it was still a lot of fun. It was super suspenseful. It was just, you know, it's a little sad too, just it being the end, but I feel like the theme of love in here, which was very relevant, I think it makes it feel like it's a good conclusion to the series. My only complaint was, again, like I said, I figured out who it was early on, and I still find the kids super annoying, and there wasn't a big focus on them in this one. It was more focused on Gwen's story and like her character development. But Other than that, I gave this a 4 to 5 stars. I'm very sad that this series is over, but I know it's definitely one that I can reread, you know, in the future from beginning to end, you know, back to back to back. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of the books that you read this month were and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.